Welcome to Talkin' Targaryen. Today we're talking about House of the Dragon, Episode 2, titled The Rogue Prince. We just watched the episode, so this will be our instant take, our raw, immediate reactions to it, but check back later in the week on our podcast channel for our full recap and analysis. Also, no spoilers for anything beyond Episode 2, so nothing from future episodes, including anything mentioned in the book, Fire and Blood. I'm Gil.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Alon.
Let's get into it. Let's start with us finally getting an answer to a question that we were thinking about a lot last week. People in the chat are already mentioning it. What's the new theme song going to be? What's the starting going to be? Last week, it was the insignia with the sort of a boom, 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 boom. And then it started. And this week, Daniel, what was it?
It was the Game of Thrones theme song.
That's right. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think I said last week, there's no way you can top that theme song. It's so iconic.
I like to imagine that, I'm sure they had a whole conversation about it. And I'm sure they also went through iterations.
I bet they had multiple conversations about it.
I'm sure they have. And I bet they even wrote multiple iterations of new potential theme songs, and they're like, all right, let's just stick with the original.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound like Game of Thrones. Or maybe they had a new one ready to go, and then tonight some intern hit the wrong button. They just sent out the wrong one. So I won't lie, slightly disappointed that we didn't get something new.
Yeah.
But I don't really care all that much, and I also just can't blame them. I feel like that song is so iconic, you really can't beat it. My one thing with the intro, I would say visually, not quite as memorable or interesting as the original.
Very cool concept, but it just felt very repetitive.
Yeah.
Like all those little, whatever those were, they all look the same to me.
And those
Just
were basically
visually.
symbols for different members of the Targaryen family tree, right?
Yeah.
Connected by blood. What do you think that's a metaphor for?
Family line.
There you go. All right, there's not much more to say about the theme song, right? So let's get into the actual developments of tonight. So toward the end of the episode, Daemon said, "It was never my brother's strongest trait." Corlys said, "What?" And Daemon said, "Being king." So, Daniel, do you agree with Daemon here?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
At a certain point midway through the episode, I found myself thinking, this King Viserys guy, I kind of like him because he does seem to be well-intentioned. He seems like a kind person, at least, if you look through the lens of the times and the world that they're in. But he's just starting to seem weak.
Well, sorry, I was just going to say, it makes sense to surround yourself with experts and take their advice, but it seems like all he does is listen to what other people suggest.
Yeah, he's like a deliberative politician without any real opinions of his own, or maybe he has them, but he's not really going to use them.
Yeah.
And so he looks almost out of place in this brutal world, being this deliberative guy, right? The Corlys seriously disrespects him in that small council meeting. And I thought it was almost comical that immediately afterward, he goes to placate him and his wife and goes to talk with them.
And he often seems to ask for advice, and he knows the answer. Like, you think I should marry this girl? And they're like, well, and he's like, but marrying someone you don't really love, that kind of sucks, right? But you think I should marry her? And you know the right answer. So there's a few things in the episode that give you the feeling of this King Viserys guy could be a little bit stronger. Not wanting to go to war, which that's one where you can see both sides of it. Going into the stepping stones, you don't want to go in with a dragon, Daenerys style, and just start blowing people away. You could see why that would stoke some flames.
Nice.
Him and Alicent, when he's talking to her, and he's like, "You don't tell Rhaenyra about these talks, right?"
Yeah.
Just how nervous he was. He's going to possibly lose a finger because of a paper cut.
Yeah.
It looks like that was the cut he got 6 months earlier, thanks to the Iron Throne, that little prick on his finger. And just seeing him so torn over what to do here over a personal matter. And actually, that's a question I have. This marriage proposal, he's torn over whether or not to go through with it. I think on one hand, there's an obvious reason. He recently lost his wife about 6 months ago. I don't know if you caught that in the episode. It's been half a year since this happened.
They mentioned that a few times.
I'm sure the people who didn't enjoy the exposition last week were like, take a shot every time they mention specifically how much time it's been. But there's the obvious reason why he wouldn't want to remarry right now. She's 12, for God's sake. It's immoral. And there's another girl he kind of likes. So there's the personal reason that's pretty obvious. Is there also an element of not really trusting Corlys and not wanting to give in to what he's asking for here?
So maybe, right? But we're not seeing Viserys go through much like Machiavellian strategic thinking here. Maybe it's all happening behind the scenes, but instead we just kind of see him like skulking around and asking everybody their opinions. Right? And what's the last scene we see with him before he makes that decision? It's him with Rhaenyra having a sentimental conversation. Right? The thing that struck me in that conversation was he kind of was acting out of character. He was saying, I have to like defend the family line against its enemies and all this stuff. And it did seem out of place for him. Like that didn't seem like the way he normally speaks. And Rhaenyra had a reaction to it, right? Of feeling like this is going to create distance between the two of them. And it seems like his decision ultimately is because of that. Like it's somehow he thinks this is going to create less of a divide between him and Rhaenyra. And this is him also sort of making a sentimental choice, I think.
Another potential aspect of this is it seems to me like in this particular area of his life, he doesn't want to just be told what to do. So in this case, it seems like Otto played his cards much better than Corlys, right?
That's right.
Corlys did, because Corlys is just straight up saying, you should marry my daughter. And he's like, you know what? I don't want to be told what to do in this regard. And no one told him to marry Alicent. So he's like, you know what? I'm the one making this decision here. So I think that might be another.
Though he was,
component.
like you alluded to, artfully manipulated by Otto to get there.
It was pretty obvious to us.
By the way, you can just see every character, including Otto, you can just see the gears turning in their heads now. Every time Viserys asks them a question, there's like a pause as they're figuring out their angle, and then boom, they go after it.
It's so funny the way we all stood up in our seats when he's like, I plan to marry, and then as soon as there was a pause, you're like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Just don't, please don't.
And then when he says Alicent Hightower, and you see the look on Otto's face, he's just like the worst
I didn't
poker
do
face.
anything.
Yeah. What a bizarre and strange turn of events here. Wow.
How funny, by the way, in this scene, to me, the cringeworthy thing he would do would be saying he's marrying Alicent Hightower. Somehow, the less cringeworthy thing here would be to marry the 12-year-old.
At least that felt like it was purely an on-the-books marriage. They weren't going to do anything physical till age 14.
Yeah.
It was all above board. But yeah, Otto clearly manipulating him into this.
Well,
the obvious thing is...
how old is Alicent? Because his daughter is 15.
She would be 14 now.
Okay.
I mean,
Approaching
anything
15.
above 14, apparently,
Yeah.
in this world.
So at a certain point in the episode, Viserys is asking Otto for advice. He's like, what should I do? And really all Otto can offer is, man, I really wouldn't want to marry for purely political reasons.
And again, it's Otto's exact method of manipulating Viserys, and everyone's method of manipulating him is they all see that he's not using like rational thinking here. He's just being sentimental.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I didn't mention, by the way, for why he comes off as kind of weak this episode is the fact that he's been letting Daemon run wild in Dragonstone. And just, it seems he's essentially taken the city guard and he's like, they're mine now, and I'm going to amass an army.
And he's taken Dragonstone.
Yeah, exactly. And then he stole a dragon egg. Now, Daemon continues to be a really interesting character to me and someone whose motivations I want to understand better. Because it's not yet clear to me how much of this is Machiavellian and how much of it is just, I want to get my brother's attention. The Jimmy Chuck.
Yeah.
So where does it stand for you right now?
I think so far there's almost no Machiavellian anything going on. I think we're going to get the Machiavellian component now that Corlys is on his side. Because what was Daemon's reaction immediately when he gets confronted by the Hand, by Hightower? Mm-hmm. His first question is, where's the king?
Yeah.
It really seems to me like he just wanted to talk to his brother.
Yeah. He didn't, is he back there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like Daemon and Viserys both suffer the same flaw, which is that they get wrapped up in personal matters, and then other people see that and use it to manipulate them. I think that's what we're seeing with Corlys at the end there, because it does feel like, what is he trying to accomplish here other than signify, I am coming for you, and just to provoke Viserys and provoke everybody else on the council. And then interestingly, so Rhaenyra has a couple of big moments this episode where she tries to live the role of future queen, right? Suggesting taking dragons to the stepping stones. And then, of course, the other, and that to me felt a little bit like not that well thought out. Like directionally correct, showing a little more force than her father, but maybe going a little too far. Here, though, is where she really gets a chance to shine with Daemon, because I think she knows Daemon better than anyone. So it felt very genuine to me, and it felt real to me that she would know she could go there with a dragon and call his bluff. Like, you're going to get married, huh? And he's like, are you going to have a kid? He's like, one day. So she immediately knows he was lying.
Well, and I think she also was able to figure it out. She had a really strong reaction when she found out which egg was taken. Right? And the fact that I guess it was the egg that they gave to the heir for a day.
Yeah.
Right? So I think she clearly saw this as, again, it's a personal thing. Like, this isn't some power move, whatever. This is a personal thing. I got to go talk with my brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or my uncle. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think, again, why did Daemon actually do this? It feels like he just knew it would be a way to stick it to his brother, get their attention. Now, we could be wrong. Maybe he's going to turn out to be a little smarter than we think. But at least so far, my feeling is just like Viserys, he's getting wrapped up in a personal, emotional issue. Corlys sees that, knows he can use it to his advantage.
Yeah.
His ports are getting beggared like crazy right now.
Yeah, it feels right now like both Viserys and Daemon are basically just pawns in everybody else's game.
Well, it seems like Daemon is a little more aware of it. When he's talking to Corlys, you actually see when Corlys starts complaining about his brother, Daemon's like, you can't talk like that about my brother. Only I can. Right. So it seems like he's going to stand his ground a little better than Viserys does.
Yeah, but even that is him allowing himself to get riled up also, right? Like, he's not just focused on the content of what Corlys is saying to him. He's also, just being emotional about it.
He's shown an insecurity.
Yeah, which can be exploited.
Right.
True, but also at the same time, he's showing that he has power, and it's like, don't mess with me. I could still squash you if I need to.
Well, that's what I love about all these decisions, is that there's no right decision.
Yeah.
With the marriage, if he goes through with it, he's acquiescing to Corlys, who he himself, Viserys, even acknowledged, he's been looking at me with envy this entire time. Like, I don't fully trust that he has the best intentions for me. So he can either give in or he can marry Alicent, which it feels like neither of those feels like the right call. And I think it's similar with Daemon here. No matter what he does, he's kind of showing some weakness.
Yeah, I mean, Corlys, he's starting to seem pretty cold-hearted, where he's literally just playing the game. Mm-hmm. Like he will be your friend, in a split second he'll be your enemy. Like, he doesn't care.
And I love the consistency in character where we see these things set up last episode that kind of flourish here. Like Daemon going to Corlys, it's presented as or Corlys going to Daemon, it's presented as a twist. Right, you see Corlys talking, the camera's slowly panning over, but they've given us enough to know he's probably talking to Daemon here. We saw multiple times last episode when the council was coming down on Daemon for his big show with the gold cloaks. Corlys was the one that kept coming to his defense. The city guard should be feared. That sort of thing. So this felt pretty well set up. How do you think Alicent feels about this proposal? I think there's a reason that her fingers are bleeding all episode.
She's a little stressed.
Yeah, I think so. I do think she genuinely feels bad for Viserys, and she genuinely sympathizes with him. He lost a wife, she lost a mother, but I think it's pretty clear that she doesn't look to him as, I want to marry him, and I want to marry him soon. I think that's why she's picking at her fingers, and very clearly Otto, as we've seen, pushed her into this. And I don't know if Viserys knows that Otto is the one insisting on her going to visit him all the time.
Yeah, I would think not.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it.
And she also clearly seems... I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah. No, we're going to sit here and wait till you remember.
Wait. I got it. 1 second. Well, she does seem like she actually cares about Viserys, right? Because she does defend Viserys to Rhaenyra at one point. I was going to say that, but that wasn't the point I was going to make.
No, I think that's true. I think that she does. Yeah, but she likes him the way that a girl may look up to someone or sympathize with them, but just not as a marriage partner.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't think she doesn't feel good about being a pawn in these games also, right? And that's like a theme between her and Rhaenyra, right?
Yeah.
They both don't like feeling like they're in this world controlled by all these other people.
So I feel with Alicent, she kind of has that feeling like, I think Daenerys's wife before she died felt, where they have their place in this world and they can't really break out of that role. Mm-hmm. So she's basically just accepted, I'm supposed to go comfort him, I'm supposed to marry him, I'm just supposed to do whatever I'm told.
Yeah, so far she has definitely been on a very tight leash. We haven't gotten to see her act out very much.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see Rhaenyra
Have some influence.
influence her a little bit,
Yeah.
because she's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, and one thing that I mentioned last episode that we're seeing more of this episode is we don't just have the war brewing, where you can just feel the tension of everything's going to go to hell soon. You also get little glimmers of positivity, the things that are going to make you upset when everything goes to hell. For me, we mentioned the moment earlier, but it was a little bit of a gut punch. When Viserys is talking to Rhaenyra before he makes the decision to marry Alicent or makes the announcement, he's talking to Rhaenyra and he says, "I don't want us to become estranged." And I was thinking, you're definitely
Yep.
going to become estranged.
Well, right. It seems like everybody around them is basically trying to isolate Viserys, right? They're trying to tear apart like the core Targaryen family. Where like Hightower does not go to Daemon in a way that's going to lead to a peaceful resolution, right? He's immediately making all sorts of personal insults, and clearly like he's trying to stir chaos. Right? I was thinking the whole Littlefinger "chaos is a ladder" quote, right? Like I think Hightower wanted to start like a serious war with Daemon, right? And like fully separate Daemon and the king. And then he's going to find a way to separate the king from Rhaenyra, which also is now seems like it's going to happen.
Yeah, and we didn't mention it before, but Rhaenyra is feeling a little bit threatened, right? Because now her father's remarrying. He gets to have more kids over time. And like the Queen That Never Was pointed out, some of those kids may be male, which even if her father stands up and says Rhaenyra is the heir, the rest of the realm will look at that and say, well, you have a son now. So it's all good. He can be the king. So I think she feels a bit threatened by that. I guess I'll pause there and just say, any other thoughts you had on the episode?
Well, I'm kind of curious about Rhaenyra's mindset, because obviously, like, you know, she's talking to her father. It sounds like she's just telling him what she knows he wants to hear. Like, I support whatever your decision is. I know you made me the heir, but if you have a son, you know, that's the rightful heir. But obviously, like, it seems like she wants to be queen. Like, I forget, she mentioned something about, oh yeah, when I'm queen, there'll be a new
order,
new order. So yeah, so I'm very curious how she's gonna react once he actually does start popping out some new heirs.
Yeah, well,
so.
she gets very defensive, right, when she talks with Rhaenys. You know, speaking like, you know, somebody who really cares about being queen. And it's interesting, right? In the first episode, we talked about how she didn't really seem to care about the power, right? She explicitly says she just wants to, you know, travel the world on dragonback, whatever. Now she clearly is starting to care.
Yeah, and I also think just being in the room and seeing how mishandled the realm is by this small room of gentlemen, I think she sees not just an opportunity, but almost a responsibility. When you see something broken, she is definitely the kind of person where when you see something broken and you know you have the power to fix it, she wants to fix it.
Yeah.
That's partially why she jumped on the dragon and flew out to Daemon.
No, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. And she knew if she asked for permission, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, which worked, because after she came back, her father was a little angry with her, and then they were fine.
Well, but then he went and married her best friend. So.
That's true.
True. But I don't know if that was in response to that.
Well, it came right after.
It definitely was an emotional decision, so it's all in the mix.
Yeah. A lot of variables.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one thing I think that will be difficult for Rhaenyra is that, to me, it feels like she sees herself as kind of above playing the game right now. I think if she looks at that room of people controlling the world, she sees the petty things between them and the little struggles for power. She sees her brother feeling insecure about his, Daemon feeling insecure about his relationship with Viserys, is threatening to create a civil war. And so I feel like she might think she can rise above all that and rule with more logic. And I have a feeling that as she gets more involved, she'll start to see how you can't just do whatever you want.
Well, she even said that, right? She said she would change the order of things when
Yeah.
she's queen.
And we see how well that always goes. Any other thoughts before we start going to the chat? Do you have any Daniel's bits for us?
No, not for today. Maybe in the full take.
A good episode. I will continue watching.
Yeah, we'll have to have that check in every episode.
Seriously.
All right, well, let's go to Dio. Thank you for the super chat. He says, I think the thing I love about the show the most is that all of the characters seem like decent people deep down. I'm not rooting against anyone. I generally agree with that, but I will say that Daemon, I'm intrigued by him, and I know we are not meant to just see him as a monster, and I definitely don't, but I don't fully sympathize with him yet.
Yeah, it does feel like he killed a bunch of innocent people in the last episode.
Yeah.
They were alleged criminals. And he didn't just kill everyone. It was based on the crime. Like, there was one guy, I think, cut off his hand or something because he was a thief, and then, he killed the murderer.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
it seemed like a really strict process.
Let's give
they
him the
had.
benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I still think we were meant to interpret that scene
Yeah.
as he was just killing criminals, but just doing it too aggressively.
Yeah.
But yeah, we discussed the fact that it was in the dark. I don't know how he can so easily identify.
An innocent may have slipped in there. It's
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
same in the
So
dark.
I agree with the comment. I think it's interesting. What I do find interesting is that it's almost just the Targaryens actually that I think are decent people. The Targaryens and like Alicent, like the Hand, I just kind of assume he's a scumbag, right? I guess because we see less of him, so it's hard for me to think he's a decent person. Like I think him and Corlys and like everybody in the small council, I think they're all just the Game of Thrones scumbag type people we got used to, who are just like vying for power.
Right. Yeah, Otto, he made a great impression on me at first. And then there were a couple turning points last episode.
I'm actually a little impressed that he actually went to confront Daemon, with sword in hand.
Yeah.
So to me, that implies, he's not afraid of some combat.
Well,
I am curious to see how he handles himself in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did that on purpose to try to screw everything up, though, right? Like that wasn't. It was not the right approach to go there. Him like brandishing his sword, yelling personal insults at Daemon. Like I think that was his move just to mess everything up.
Yeah, you loser.
Yeah, like he just kept calling, his alleged wife all sorts of
Yeah,
insults.
that's true. But listen, he's got guts. Someone else in his position would probably try to work behind the scenes and, without weapon.
Yeah.
He did show guts.
Manipulate.
It was
manipulate.
interesting, the passage of time. I mean, first off, we had the 6-month time skip to this episode. And then when he says, I'm going to go see Daemon about this. Hey, Daemon. He's just there the next scene. And I had no issue with that whatsoever. But it did make me think about the old days with Game of Thrones where these things would take a long time.
As long as they're consistent about it. With Game of Thrones, it was just so sudden and inconsistent from the rest of the show where all of a sudden it felt like they could teleport.
Yeah, toward the end of the series, it felt like the pace picked up and you started to skip. I mean, the point you made is that if nothing interesting happened along the way on the journey, why do we need to dwell on it?
True. And so far, this is a smaller story. We're not following all these different houses. So there's not necessarily anything else to cut to in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. I think, so yeah, I'm definitely enjoying the show. I would say borderline loving it. Like I found myself really looking forward to this tonight. It's making me, one of the key complaints I've heard from other people about the show is that it feels too similar to Game of Thrones, which I can see the argument, but at the same time, this is the show, right? The whole thing is scheming, it's politics, it's war. And there are some characters where it's sort of, you can squint and say, okay, Rhaenyra, her personality is pretty similar to Daenerys.
The theme song was pretty similar.
The theme song sounded pretty similar. Somebody in the comments mentioned it, but Viserys feels a little bit like Ned Stark. So you see some similarities, but I'll say for me, it has not crossed the line where I say, I just feel like I'm watching the same show
I
again.
think a lot of those similarities, I feel like, are distortions. Or like I really like as we get to know the characters better and better, I don't think we're gonna think
Agreed.
the repeats. I also think the show does feel fairly different. It feels a lot smaller. It feels a lot more family, interpersonal sort of focus than Game of Thrones.
But also Game of Thrones had so many characters and so many different personalities. I mean, they've covered such a broad range. It's gonna be hard not to have some similarities. You know?
History repeats.
True.
Time is a flat circle.
Okay.
True
Time is a
detective.
flat. Okay.
But what I will say, and this is it's kind of a double-edged sword. The fact that it is so focused on a small set of characters, I was going to say that is the one thing that I miss from Game of Thrones. I do miss that broad, epic scope. At the same time, Better Call Saul, one of my favorite shows ever. I don't know if you knew that, but it's so focused on such a small group of characters, and that's one of the things I loved about it. But that takes a little bit of time to grow on you, I think, as you get to peel the layers of these characters and see what they're capable of, see what choices they make. So I think over time, although I miss the broader scope now, I hope I come to appreciate this more focused approach.
Well, I think we're going to end up getting a broader scope too, right? Given these time jumps.
It's
right?
true,
Like,
yeah.
Viserys does not seem long for this world, right? I don't know how many more 6-month time jumps he's going
How
to
many more
survive.
paper cuts you can get?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we didn't see any new cuts on the throne this episode.
Yeah, and it seems like after they cauterized his back hole, he seems to be doing a little bit better. And I'll say the one other thing that I kind of miss from Game of Thrones, I'm not quite getting here yet, and I think this is a pretty common thing people are pointing out. There isn't anybody that I am emphatically rooting for. On Game of Thrones, it was pretty easy to get on Jon Snow's side. I always forget his name. Tyrion?
Tyrion.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had the classic underdog story of they're outcasts, but you know they're capable of more. And everyone looks down on them, but Tyrion finds ways to kind of snip back at them more clever than anybody else in the room. So there's nobody on the show right now that I'm rooting for just emphatically, like I said. But there are so many characters I care about. I'm intrigued by them. But I think if I was trying to put my finger on why I don't feel as compelled as I did in the original series, I think that's probably the reason why.
And I think we're supposed to be rooting for Rhaenyra, right? Would be my guess. But she has a dragon. So it just feels a little hard, right? Like Daenerys did not have a dragon at the beginning. Tyrion was a dwarf and an outcast and all this stuff, right? Like she has a dragon, like she's super powerful. So like I feel like I kind of need to see her go through a lot more difficulty before I'm gonna like really feel on her side.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, knowing this world, I think we'll see it.
It'll happen.
All right. Any other thoughts?
Well, I feel like we haven't really touched on the crab feeder
Oh yeah.
guy at all. That was cool. I really liked.
It feels a little bit like they have a checkbox or checklist. They say we need to have some gruesome violence. Why don't we do a cutaway to the crab feeder?
Well, I feel like they're going to instill some fear in some of our main characters.
I think so. And I also think this show is, in terms of the violence, it's showing me something I haven't seen a lot of, which is it's kind of hard to describe, but geometric shapes being removed from a person's body. So last episode, where you see a piece of the guy's face fall off, and then here I felt like it was almost a rectangle or a parallelogram just missing in the guy's foot where the crab's reading
Why
him.
do you have such a big smile?
It's just so bizarre. And yeah, I'll say so far the violence has not been lacking.
Fear of rectangular portions missing from human bodies.
Yes,
What's a name for
sure
that?
they have a name for that. Nino asks, do you think we'll get a Lyle appearance next episode? I think that's all but guaranteed. And actually, I should say we don't watch the next time on preview, Nino. So if you saw Lyle in the next time on, I'm going to be upset.
Well, at least he's in our after shows.
Yeah, there you go. I feel like I have one more thing to say. Oh, the crab feeder. It is kind of funny how he's been set up as, we said there's no monsters in this show. I feel like the crab feeder is the bad guy. He even has that, I don't know if he was wearing something at the end, but...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't tell if maybe that was like that disease with the stone or, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but maybe it looked too like flat that maybe it was some sort of mask.
Yeah, this is
or
where
helmet.
we'll do, usually after the instant take, we do a little deep dive into the lore, and then we come back on the full take. Daniel will have a complete breakdown right in front of you. It's going to be terrible. No, he's going to full breakdown of the crab feeder. Yeah, as Guy Incognito says, he sends crabs to eat parallelograms out of his enemy's feet. All right, well, I think... Oh, and I wanted to say one more thing, Alon.
What?
Otto Hightower. Do you recognize that actor?
He looks familiar, but...
Lizard. Amazing Spider-Man. This is Reese Ifans. I always forget how to pronounce his last name.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the casting
So
on
they
the
could
show,
actually get him for this show, unlike for the new Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, that's right. I think the casting on the show pretty much across the board is pretty great.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, with that, unless you guys have any other final thoughts for the instant take, save it for the full take. All right, so like I said at the start of this, later in the week over on the podcast channel, we're going to go through the episode scene by scene with a full recap and analysis. And by the way, if you're watching this and you prefer to listen to us, you can find us on any podcast app. I saw somebody in the chat ask about Spotify. Check out the description. We've got links for Google, Apple, and Spotify. Any other podcast app, just search Talking Targaryen. And if you're like, I don't know how to spell Targaryen, just see the title of this video, and it's right there. If you're listening to us and you want to watch us or participate in these live streams, there's a link in the show notes that'll take you to our YouTube channel. Also, while you're at it, while you're clicking links, navigating around the internet, why not stop by the Apple Podcast app and leave us a rating or a review? That helps us a ton.
Or both.
Or both. Or. We'd really appreciate it. Last couple things, if you want to keep the conversation going, talk about House of the Dragon with other one-takers / talking Targaryens, you can head to our Discord, link in the show notes, link in the description. Last thing, if you want to support us and you want to get some bonus content, check out the Patreon, link in the description. With that, I'm Gil.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Alon.
And this is Talking Targaryen. Instant Take.